It is so often. There's a lot of interest right now with the Lakers' position out west. And we're not just talking about for the playoff purposes. What more can you tell us about where they are?
Yeah, there's a secondary story here that goes with the Lakers' slide in the West, and that's what happens to their draft pick here in 2022. Now, they traded it to New Orleans as part of the Anthony Davis deal in 2019, and then New Orleans traded it to Memphis last summer. It was unprotected originally, but New Orleans protected the pick to New Orleans 1 through 10. So that means Memphis needs the Lakers to finish 11 through 30, and then Memphis has that pick this year. Well, they were enjoying very much watching the Lakers slide early in the season. Right. The pick was getting better and better for Memphis as the Lakers struggled. Well, Memphis doesn't need the Lakers to fall all the way out of the playoffs because then they probably lose it, and New Orleans keeps it this year. And you look at the Lakers now, and guess who's on their heels? 2 games behind them for 9th place, the Pelicans. And so you've got a Memphis team that potentially could have 3 first-round picks this year and $20 million in cap space. They have a chance to get even better this summer, but they need the Lakers to stay in the playoff chase here.
And LeBron says he's going to try to get that team in the playoffs no matter what. We'll see how that plays out. WOJ is always appreciated. And speaking of the Lakers and the Knicks, of course, how bad things have been. Well, last season, the Knicks and Lakers ranked 1st and 2nd in opponent points per game and both ranked in the top 11 in terms of win percentage. This season, however, both teams ranked in the bottom 3rd in win percentage and point differential. So the question is, who's in a more frustrating position? Is it the Lakers or is it the Knicks? Oh, I should go over here first.
Go over there.
Let's save the best for last on this Knicks, but let's go with you, Perk.
It's the Lakers, and it's not even a debate for the simple fact the only people that really had expectations for the New York Knicks was Stephen A. Spike Lee and the other New Yorkers. When you look at the Los Angeles Lakers and what they did for us building this team, it reminds me of the 2004 Lakers with Gary Payton, Shaquille O'Neal, Kobe Bryant, and Karl Malone. All guys that were pretty much old, future Hall of Famers that formed together. At least they got to the finals. At least they didn't have a disappointing season. So when I look at the Lakers with all those guys from Melo, Braun, Anthony Davis, Russell Westbrook, Dwight Howard, and they're in the position that they're in right now, not only is this a disappointment right now, a frustration, but this might be the biggest disappointment in NBA history for us.
Okay,
where they at right now.
I don't know about that because 2 years ago they won a championship. I think it's the biggest separation or, divide from that championship season to where they are now. And the issues that they have had have largely just been, the investment in Russell Westbrook and hoping that he would transform this team. Yeah, he's increased their pace, but then there's been bumps and bruises along the way. And then Anthony Davis's lack of availability, that's what's really hurt the Lakers. When I look at both franchises, premier franchises in the NBA, my number one issue is that we have the Lakers with expectations and the Knicks. We all know what the Knicks likely were last year. I mean, hopefully they win a first round, playoff series, but in actuality, it's not surprising to see them sort of struggle this year, knowing that last year was pretty out of their realm.
Well, first of all, not only is Kendrick Perkins wrong, but he's very cruel. I thought I was his boy. I have to rethink that because he said the truth when he said the only people that had expectations were the Knicks, was Stephen A., Spike Lee, and those New Yorkers. Well, damn it, who's answering the question now? It would happen to be Stephen A. So I'm going to go with the Knicks, okay? Because I am a native New Yorker. Because I am a diehard Knicks fan. Because I have been struggling. Because I was a sucker who stood up in Madison Square Garden during COVID and said, New York, stand up. We here. We here, okay? And less than a year later, it's all evaporated. All of it. We're not talking about them in any kind of capacity whatsoever in regards to anything new. All we're doing is looking at the Knicks and saying, this is who they used to be. They're back to being who they are. I do know that the Lakers have been a huge disappointment, but Anthony Davis's injury and the non-workability of the chemistry involving Russell Westbrook with them, but that's just for this year. The second this season is over and we look forward to next year, we'll say, LeBron, clean this up in the offseason so we could get back. With the Knicks, we see an abyss. We don't know if there's a light at the end of the tunnel or there's any hope. Because World Wide West is my brother, because Scott Perry is that dude, because Tom Thibodeau can coach, because I'm trying to hold out every hope for Leon Rose, that's the only reason I'm able to contain myself, but that's all I have. You have LeBron. We have Leon Rose.
By the way, today,
He's 38.
today,
Morgan,
Stephen
don't
A.,
go.
2 years to the day that Leon Rose became the president of the New York Knicks.
I like Leon Rose.
And this is where they stand.
I like Leon Rose. I've known Leon Rose for years. But I meant this sincerely when I said it. There are inmates in state penitentiaries more visible than Leon Rose.
I'm gone.
I don't know where he is. I'm not talking about in the stands during the game.
Right.
I'm talking about answering questions, giving New Yorkers some hope, talking to us about what your plans are. There are inmates in state penitentiaries more visible than Leon Rose. Jeannie Buss is seen and heard from more than Leon Rose. And she don't do many interviews.
No, she does not.
What's up, guys? Matt, your takeaway from the latest Lakers loss?
Ugly. This is the narrative has changed so much during this season, Max. This team went from a title hopeful, odds-on favorite to are they going to make the playoffs? Normally, anytime you have LeBron on your roster, you're going to have a chance. And I still believe in this team. But I think what they did in the bubble in 2020, people don't really understand how hard it is. They've been putting a new team together every single year since LeBron has been there. And that is hard to do. They struck lightning in a bottle being able to win a championship in the bubble, but that is hard to do, and you're starting to see that. Everyone wants to say this is an experienced team. This is just an older team that's built for the playoffs. So if they're able to make the playoffs, I think, who knows if they'll win a championship, but I think we'll see better basketball because they have more time in between. It's about adjustments, and they have days off.
Brian, your take on the situation in L.A.?
Yeah, so they don't really have a choice, Max, because they don't have their draft pick this year under any circumstance. So it's not like a year ago Toronto was in this situation. They were not as good as they thought, and they kind of shut down and ended up striking lottery luck. The Lakers don't have that option. And the second thing is, like LeBron said, they do have the opportunity to catch some lightning in a bottle. There is some relevance to the fact that Anthony Davis, a top 15 player, is going to hopefully rejoin them within the month or so. And so that's what they're playing for. But I will say that, LeBron did lay the groundwork before the All-Star break that his knee is going to be bothering him the rest of the season. So I've been listening very closely, and this was the most definitive statement that he's made, that he doesn't intend to shut things down. Now, we'll see. There's still, a month and a half left. But I think it's interesting that there's two things that LeBron cares about deeply. One is winning championships. Number two is history. And so while the championship may not come this year, LeBron still does have something to play for. He's chasing Karl Malone. He should be able to catch him by the end of the season for number two, setting the stage in all-time scoring, setting the stage to catch Kareem Abdul-Jabbar next year. So LeBron will have motivation to play for that, and while he wouldn't admit that, it does matter.
Matt, I remember, and I believe this was the year after you left the team. I was in L.A. doing radio and on the Lakers station, and they traded for Steve Nash and Dwight Howard, and that was and you were on the Clippers at that point, right? That was you had just been on the Pau Gasol, Andrew Bynum team. And they got rid of too many of the Matt Barneses on the previous iteration of the team. And they, it was Dwight and Nash and all the shiny names. And this, to me, looks like the biggest underachieving team, star-studded Lakers team since that one, right? But in that one, Kobe Bryant kind of staged a behind-the-scenes mutiny. He was like, I'm not running this D'Antoni offense. I'm going to will us to the playoffs. He did. He played himself 40-plus minutes a game. And he wound up tearing his Achilles, and he was never, that was basically the end of his career, right, as Kobe Bryant until that 60-point performance last night of his career. So what about the fact, Brian brings it up, Wendy brings it up, at what cost do you try to squeak into the playoffs or the play-in and not win a playoff series most likely? You're going to play a 37-year-old with all these miles, 1 million minutes a game? At what point does it get dangerous, Matt?
This is going to be a tough call and a tough situation. Like Brian said, they can't tank or pack it in because they really have nothing to pack it in for. So it is going to be a tough call. And again, I think all the things that Brian mentioned, although they're not discussed, LeBron is very aware of what's going on. His level of play hasn't really dipped, to be honest with you. He's still playing at a great level. The question has arisen in the last few weeks, although LeBron is a great player, can he still carry a team? That's a big question. And I think they were hoping that Anthony Davis obviously was going to be the one that was going to do a lot of heavy lifting and allow LeBron to really shine in the playoffs. AD has been in and out the whole season. So it's going to be interesting down the stretch to see how this team plays it.
Yeah, they never got enough shooting on the team. AD's not there for the defense, et cetera, et cetera. Another team out west that's struggling is the Golden State Warriors. They lost to the T-Wolves last night, are now just a half game ahead of the Grizzlies for the second seed in the West. Wendy, what's your read on what's going on with Golden State?
Yeah, they got three problems. Number one, Draymond Green is injured, and we still don't have a good timetable when he's coming back, which isn't a surprise because it's a back injury. Number two, they're just weak at the big man spot. Karl Anthony Towns did a number on them last night, especially when they had to take Kevon Looney off the court. And number three, their shooters are in a slump. You go back and look since February 1st, when they have a losing record, look at these shooting percentages. Jordan Poole, a guy who was absolutely spectacular while Klay Thompson was rehabbing earlier this year, since he's gone to the bench role, can't hit a shot. You put those three things together in a conference where you expect to get it every single night, you're going to lose some games. That's what's happening.
Wendy, I know Poole is really good free throw shooter, and that usually indicates consistency shooting the three or shooting from distance. But I thought when they put this team together last year, other than Steph, every other player on the team, there was not one other plus shooter at any position. Wiggins had a great shooting, but his career doesn't tell you he's a plus shooter for a 2, right? Draymond can't shoot from the outside. He's not a plus shooter for a 4. They don't have the shooting, right? I mean, even Poole is not a great shooter until last year. They all kind of shot above their heads last year.
Well, but Poole was shooting the ball great early in this season. And, they did get Klay Thompson back, and he's been okay. It's just that Poole, frankly, Steph has not shot the ball well all year. This is arguably his worst shooting season in 10 years. And Jordan Poole, you thought when you moved him to the second unit, he would be able to sort of, control games a little bit. His usage rate, which is, how many, much he's used in the offense, has been actually lower. So just everything isn't coming together for them right now.
Matt, what's your level of concern for Golden State at this moment?
My concern is Draymond Green's health, first and foremost. This team doesn't stand a chance in the playoffs without him. With a healthy him and Klay in rhythm, this team can win a championship. I don't think people understand what kind of security blanket he is on the defensive end, what they've been struggling in, and how he's able to run the offense. If you look at this team when they're really rolling, Draymond Green has the ball in his hands, making a lot of the big decisions to get Steph open, in the past to get Klay open, and then getting these role players going as well. So I think Draymond Green's numbers are very deceiving as far as how important he is for this team's success.